Welcome to Perry Unlikely. So we're going to do something a little bit different from my channel anyway, but I always participate in different panels. We are going to talk about $100,000 in terms of $100,000 in income. It's something that's been out there for a long time, obviously. I even looked up today just references of rap songs and popular culture that talk about this figure of making six figures. And we're going to talk about, is this something real? Is 100,000 enough in present day? Also, we'll talk a little bit about where this came from, or try to get at least ask some questions to the panel where they think this came from. And I'm going to go ahead without further ado and bring up the other members of the panel, and we're going to get this started. We definitely would love your feedback during it. Any questions you have, certainly drop them. We will mention them, and we'll go from there. First of all, I'm going to bring up Wealth Engineering. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about his channel. And let me just go ahead and say, as far as my channel, I deal in cryptocurrency, but also real estate, but mainly I've talked about cryptocurrency. But at the end of the day, for me, it's all about investing. It's all about generational wealth and, continuing legacy. So let me go ahead and bring up Wealth Engineering. Let him introduce himself.
Hey, salute, Perry Unlikely. How are you doing?
Doing good. Glad to have you.
Hey, happy to be here. Great topic. I'm happy to be discussing with you in the panel. Very quickly, what I do is I have a channel called Wealth Engineering. I have a background in engineering, and I figured I'm like, hey, the concepts to building a portfolio to build wealth can be applying as well. Like, you can derive that from engineering, so I called it Wealth Engineering. And it's basically a way to design a portfolio towards wealth, but also choosing whether stocks, crypto, real estate, or business, but the best avenue at the right time to be the most efficient to your goals. So that's basically what I talk about. I talk a lot about crypto as well, especially last year. That was the great time for it. But now we're in the bear market. But people might want to wait things to settle before start looping up things again. But quickly, that's what I talk about on my channel, and then I'm happy to be discussing about this topic today.
Absolutely, man. Glad to have you. It's going to be a very interesting discussion today. So next we got Sim. We'll bring him up. How's it going?
Salute. How's it going, everyone?
Doing good. Doing really good, man. Glad to have you on the stream tonight.
Appreciate you. Yeah, my name is Sim Sia. The name of my channel is Sim Sia, and I, for one, am an individual who's always been plagued by not understanding money and how finance works and personal finance works. So in the recent years, I've had an opportunity to get a better idea of how personal finance works and how I can conquer the topic and the concept. And now I'm on my journey in order for me to learn more and also just document and chronicle my journey. And so this is what I'm doing on my channel. I'm really having conversations about things that are interesting to me and things that I hope that people will have an opportunity to become curious about, and we can have an opportunity to have an educated conversation. So I'm happy to be here.
Good deal, man. Good deal. And next we will bring up the Intentional Millionaire. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going, gentlemen?
Good.
Welcome. Glad to be out. Glad to be on the panel. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this great conversation. But my name is the Intentional Millionaire, and on my channel, what I do is I teach men about financial concepts, coach, train, and mentor men how you can have $1 million plus portfolio. But in the process, we talk about financial literacy and also about how you have to have a mindset so you can maintain and understand financial education.
Absolutely, man. Well, glad to have you guys on the stream tonight. And here's how this is going to go. So I'm going to start the first one off just to kind of explain, the basics. And then from that point, I'll go last. I'll let you guys go first. And when we talk about this subject about, six figures, and just so everyone's clear, six figures is also 900,000. We're not talking about that. We're just simply talking the idea of making $100,000 clear across the board, because when we hear about this, right, we don't hear any nuance on it. It's basically six figures That's it, and you're good, right? So one thing I want to start off with, I want you guys to try to explain, where did you all first hear about this? And Sim dropped off. I'm sure he'll pop back on. Where did you guys first hear about this? I'll tell you. I'll tell you where I think what I most remember about it. But I'll go ahead and say, for me, Jay-Z's lyric sticks out. Now, this is a long, six figure, by the name of Jigga. Now but around that time, right? And we're talking over 20 years ago, that really just popular culture and in rap lyrics, and in music is where I first heard it. And it was just always about, making six figures. It was just repeated a lot. And I don't know if it ever transitioned into making millions. I'm sure it did as I grew kind of out of just listening to certain things. But that's really where I first really remember hearing it, was just through music. So how about you? And I'll tell Sim, just in case he missed it. I mentioned I want to know where you guys really when you first remember hearing about this six-figure thing. And for me, I remember a Jay-Z lyric specifically, but it wasn't just Jay-Z. It was all kinds of lyrics mentioning six figures. So, I'll start off with wealth engineering, then I'll follow up with the Intentional Millionaire, and then you, Sim. So wealth engineering, where do you remember first, just hearing this theme of making six figures?
Me, it was from my family. I had people in my family making six figures in the 80s, 90s,
Nice.
and then 2000s. So, but actually, I got a different misconception about that.
Okay.
I always wanted to be rich. So ever since I was a kid, I was asking my mom,
Same
what
here.
job should I do to be rich? Which is actually a problem in itself. This is the wrong question to ask if you want to be rich. It's no job is going to make you rich. But the
Right.
reason why I thought that is because people that I knew were making six figures, they had everything they wanted, and also they had jobs. But they were doctors, they were lawyers. So I'm like, okay, so maybe if I get a good job, I can get enough money. And all I really wanted back then is buying cars. So I'm like, okay, so people can buy great cars that they want. They making money, six figures, okay. But it's really when I was 29. I had that year, the year I was 29. Everything that I learned up until that time, I kind of like this matrix moment where I'm realizing everything that I learned was wrong. And then I
Right.
realized, like, man, I'm never going to be rich, even to be comfortable with a regular job, even if at that time I was close to making six figures too. And I was trying to get to that six figures and I couldn't.
Right.
And then I realized, man, it's not going to work. And by learning and seeking by information, I realized investing and doing business, that's the best route to get to that goal. And ever since then, I've been on a journey. But it was interesting for me because when I was beginning, my parent was forcing me to go to school. To like, you gotta get a good get a good degree, go to school, get a job. And then I was seeing people in my family that were pretty successful, that had a good job, that had a lot of degrees. So I associate that with being comfortable. But then later I realized different eras, right? What worked for your parents may not necessarily be working for you. They were at the beginning of this escalation of the US dollars. We are at the end. So
Right. Yeah.
different era.
Absolutely. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. I see the Intentional Millionaire laughing. So we always mention stuff that we kind of debated and talked about on other streams at times. Intentional Millionaire, what are your thoughts, man, on where you kind of first heard, just that six figures was somewhat of a standard?
I first heard it when I first started working as an engineer. When I first heard it, it was because people was making six figures, but I heard them complaining a lot about what they did not like about their job. They did a lot of complaining. So for me, that was the first time I actually heard of it. But I didn't really pay too much of any attention because they was complaining. So I didn't think a big deal about it. But when I really got into the weeds of it was when I was licensed doing insurance and stuff like that. And that was like the standard was making six figures. So that was kind of when I really got the details. But then I also learned that it's not about the six figures is important. It's about what is your strategy to keep the money.
Nice.
Because anybody
Absolutely.
can make the money, but what's your strategy to keep? Because the person that wins is the person that keep the most money. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good stuff, man. Now, Sim, how about you? You know, when did you first kind of maybe see it as a theme or really just start to think about, you know, six figures being some sort of a standard?
Yeah, so I think I'd say around the same way as you. You know, I recall songs probably in the late '90s, really
Yep.
referencing, you know, making six figures or having, you know, that as a budget, uh, either annually or something along those lines. And I can't say that I knew anyone who was making that much money. And I have to say, just it's always seemed like an impossible thing, you know, when you're younger. It just seemed like a lot more money back then compared to now. It's more of commonplace. Everyone on YouTube makes six figures too, you know. So
Right. Yeah. Everyone does. Everyone.
so,
Or seven at that, right?
I mean, and if you look on Instagram, everybody's taking flights too. So I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you said that because, you know, we've got a couple statistics and we'll read through them. So I'll read through a couple of them, and I like it because it really, like you said, everybody on YouTube is making six figures, and I like this because it really does start to get into the nuts and bolts of, hey, what's real about this whole six figure thing, right? So the article, of course, I've shared with you guys. So what I'm going to do, first of all, in the article, I'm just going to read off. It's a couple of fascinating facts, and then I'll come around, and then we'll start to address some questions about six figures. So it starts off, and this was in 2020, the median household income. Now, household, right? So this conversation we've been having is really about one person making six figures. So the median household income in 2020 was around $67,521. So already we know on the YouTube streets and on the internet streets, there's definitely some capping going on just from that, you know. The median weekly salary in the first quarter of 2022 was $1,030, which is $47 higher than the first quarter of 2021. In 2022, 34.4% of American households see a $100,000 plus income. Now, once again, that's the household. So 34% see that. More than 8% of all the U.S. population earns $100,000 a year. That's really right there is the real sticking point. So more than 8% of all the U.S. population earns $1,000 a year. Specifically, just 11.1% of all working women have a six-figure annual income. And then almost 50% of $100,000 earners are living paycheck to paycheck. Almost 50%, which is nuts. And then last fact right here, more than 500,000 in annual income, and that's a question is what it's saying. That's a luxury only 1% of households can afford. So it goes on to let you know that, you know, when we're talking about 500,000, only only 1% of households, have that luxury. So with those statistics, and if you have any questions specifically, I'll call it back out. Just let me know. Just let me know. But with just hearing those things, I'm sure a lot of, you guys on this panel, because we always talk, we talk about money. We're involved in money in some facet all the time. It's not like we get on a panel, talk about it, and then go away from it. We live it. So I would say you guys probably aren't that surprised as some people would be, but I'll start off with you, Wealth Engineering. Is six figures, and when I say this, we'll say in general, in your normal metropolitan city, is six figures enough, in your opinion?
Well, the
And
short
by
answer,
six figures, I mean 100,000. So I just want to
yeah,
be
yeah,
clear.
yeah. That's exactly how I pick.
Right.
I take it because
Okay.
there's quite a difference between 100 and 200,000.
Right.
You do feel it in your pocket, but to be honest, let's just say 100,000. And the reason why I like this number, because this is a number I've been trying since I was 30 years old. I've been setting up a plan to actually get that in my life.
Right.
And last year was the first year that I broke that number, so I was well in 100,000 last year, even after tax. And then this year, I'm barely going to make it.
Right.
But with tax, it's not. It's
Absolutely
a different story. But to answer your question very shortly, is it enough? No. The general metropolitan, no. But that's a great question too, because I'm sure we're going to address that later, or we should bring it up later as well. Is if it's not enough in where you are right now, maybe you should be moving where it's enough. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I actually would like to. Maybe I'll share you the link, because you guys might think this is funny, but if you Google my name, there is an article that was written about me when I was having that matrix moment, right? And basically, it was an article saying that I'm an engineer at the time I was married, and I was also married with an engineer wife, and we're both working, right? We're both working, making well above average salaries, and we found it very hard to save to be able to buy a home. And we're wondering, the reason why this article went viral is because we were wondering, if we are two engineers making above average salaries, struggling to buy a home for like 2 years in a row, how in the hell like people are buying homes and like that are making just average salaries, let alone below average, right?
Right.
So that's the thing I was starting to wonder. And back in the days, I was living in Toronto. Toronto is probably either the most expensive or the second most expensive city in Canada. That's where I live in Canada. So basically, I was like, okay, well, if that's not going to work, I'm struggling to I'm trying to reach that six figures. I couldn't. At the same time, the rate of inflation, how it's affecting the society, it's raising the price of everything else way faster than my yearly income is rising. So it's a problem. So it definitely wasn't enough. It definitely wasn't enough. And I felt the urgency that if I waited longer enough to increase my salary significantly, although I may not feel the pain right now, but I see it down the line, that if I wait too long, like 2-3 years down the line, that I'm really going to leave like uncomfortably, right? And back then I was living paycheck to paycheck. That's the other story. And that's one of your stats right there. How many people were making 100K living paycheck to paycheck?
50%.
Well, I was living below. I wasn't making 100K at the time, and I was living a paycheck to paycheck as well. And we're both combining our salaries, and yes, we're like around that paycheck to paycheck area. So is it enough? No. And then I'm sure we can break it down, but I put the link in the chat if you wanted to see the article later.
All right, good deal. Absolutely. Intentional. Is 100,000 a year enough?
No. Because the first thing is you don't even bring home, you cannot spend 100,000. So that's the first problem with that equation.
Right.
For me, I think you got to look at it from depending on what a person is trying to do. So if it's a single person, no family, no kids, that can be enough to at least be able to live a little bit, depending on where they're at, if they have a strategy. But for most people, the average consumer, no, it's not enough. When you factor in one kid, you automatically in the red. I mean, that's that's just what it is. So yeah, I don't think it's enough. I don't want to go too much off our topic, but yeah, this is definitely not enough.
Absolutely. Good deal. And Sim, how about you?
Yeah. So I mean, by 2022 standards, it's definitely not enough, you know, and not to include the fact that the average person does not have a tax strategy in place on how they will make their money work along the lines of what you just said, Tim. You know, just understanding the the potential opportunities for them to have some tax to reduce their tax burden. So if they're not really exploring those opportunities and they're just focused on living a life, living this Instagram life, this social media portrayed life, there's no way that it will be enough. And I'd almost say that it's a high likelihood that they're living paycheck to paycheck, you know, and they're definitely more than likely dealing with lifestyle creep, where any monies that they get or any elevation in their income, they're going to see what they can do about spending more money so they can project more of that lifestyle.
Absolutely. Good stuff. So, I'll round this one out. As far as is it enough? Nah, it's not even nearly enough. I have 2 children, and I can tell you, I mean, what some people, speaking from a pre-tax amount, what it costs for my children to go to school, like basically, it takes 15 an hour, then taxed, right? Just 15 an hour just for them to go to school. Basically, you got to make that and then get taxed maybe slightly more. So, 15 an hour, we're talking 30K already. Now, is that a long-term thing? No. Once they go to actual public school, right? Or if we put them in private school, yeah, it continues. But in general, most people will go to public school. Will it continue? No, but still, we're talking 5 years of that, right? 5 to 6 years. So there's just no way. There's no way it's enough. But I think that a lot of people aren't looking at it. I think a lot of people with this whole 6-figure thing aren't learning from their mistakes. Even if you look, one thing that I also, fortunately have the luxury of is, my wife and our home was purchased in 2012. The amount that real estate has risen, I mean, doubled literally. Since then, that alone has put a lot of people just flat out of the market. So all this time people have had, I mean, we've literally had people have had a decade. And I maintain almost anybody within let's just put it this way. If it was 2008 and your credit was absolute trash and you had no skills, I believe in 7 years, we know your credit could have been fixed and you could have gotten some skills. You could have gotten a master's degree and then bought a house in 2015 and still been in great shape. And now since 2015, we're sitting at 7 more years. People have had literally, because we talk about 2008 all the time. That was 14 years ago. So on a basic credit cycle of 7 years, people have had 2 times to get it right and still haven't. Those people are screwed. Unless they wake up, because it's never too late, but you got to wake up today and stop I'm going to get right one day. It's just, so I always try to look at it in like a time frame. But when you look at it, I sit here right now concerned. You think about generational wealth. I think generational wealth used to be a thing of your kids being rich. At this point, it should be a thing of your kids being able to survive. That's how bad it's like. Will my children be able to survive if things continue to go up like this? So, yeah, to me, it's absolutely not enough. And what I want to do is I want to segue to what I believe, right, is the main reason that it's not enough. And the way that I want to formulate this question is, wealth engineering. What is the bigger problem? Is the bigger problem debt or lack of skills? And when I say lack of skills, whether it's learning how to invest, whether it's, a formal education, college, and maybe you think it's both, but what do you think the bigger problem in that 100,000? Because myself, I believe 100,000, if you have no debt at all, yeah, you can clearly still do well on that, depending on, pretty much even in LA, you can do okay on 100,000, no debt. So what do you think it is? Do you think it is the debt, or do you think it's that people aren't as skilled as they should be, or is it a mixture of both?
So I think I hear two problems in your question. For example, why are people are not making 100K? And there we can say it scales. But then we can also say, but then there's the counter argument to that, because I love doing the devil's advocate. But the counter argument to that, well, if everyone gets the same skills, then it becomes not worthless, but it loses less of its appealing or less of its value. And that skill that used to be high income skill becomes a normal skill, right?
Right.
So there is that argument. So that's
Right.
one side of the question that I hear.
Mhm.
There is also another side that say, let's say that you are making the 100K. Why is it not enough? Well,
Right.
it's because of many different problems. When one thing is, what we're seeing it right now is inflation, right? The rise, the cost of living is rising too fast versus the income increase, right?
Right.
So because that is eventually that's okay for 1 year, but if that happens for over the last 10 years in a row, then it becomes a problem 10 years down the line, because because 10 years ago maybe 100K was very comfortable, but 10 years now we see it as not enough. So if that trend continue, you can see where you're going 10 years from now. So it's definitely, that's one of the biggest factor, which is out of most normal people's control, right? That's not something you can control. But then that's where we can argue also where the skill comes in. And I do believe as part of the skill is, just like you go to school to learn for your diploma, for your degree, you should not necessarily go to school, but you should put that same energy in learning about building your wealth as well, keep preserving your wealth, learning, keeping, and multiplying your wealth. Definitely do that, because that's exactly how you're going to fight that force that is out of your control, which is inflation. All right.
Right.
But adding to that, debt is also part of it as well, because why is it not enough? Not only you have cost of living rising, then you have your debt that you still have to maintain paying, right? So it gives you less margin from your net income that you can spend to what you need to, because you have to cover that debt really well. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, well, it doesn't give you enough room to invest that money, to put it, to save it to multiply it better. So you're being stuck in that loop. But at the same time that you're stuck in the loop, it's really a vicious cycle, because you're stuck in a loop where you can't make it better. You have to finish paying the debt, but something happened in your life that makes you increase that debt faster. And then you have cost of living rising fast. So you have debt rising, cost of living rising, and you're still stuck.
Yep.
And then 2-3 years down the line, you realize, okay, at that point, I'm really under the water. I can barely breathe, and it becomes super stressful. I know exactly how it feels, because I was in it. I was in it in Toronto. So, and that's what I'm saying is, people have to do kind of like an approach where they tackle all those problems at the same time. First, to reduce the cost of living, and if you have to move in an area where you have to help you do it, that should be part of a good discussion with your family, because that's how you're going to go through it. Second, increase those skills. High income skills, sales skills are always great to learn. You can mix that with anything you do. High income skills you learn, you increase your income, you decrease your living expenses, and then you put that in savings and investment that can pay you a return. Like real estate, for example, it pays you a return every month. ROI, return on your investment, cash flow. So things like that can definitely help you maintain and preserve your wealth over time. And that's how you have to fight and approach this problem. But yeah, that's basically the way I picked it up from what you're asking, and I'll pass it along to someone else.
Absolutely. Intentional in the greater scheme of things. And I definitely get what JC's saying, because it was kind of a two-pronged question, which is not even just really related to making 100,000. It's really just related to survival. Period. Is the bigger issue lack of skills, or is it debt? And that would essentially almost be at any amount of money someone's making, right?
For me, I would say it's neither one.
Okay.
Because you can make more money, but if you don't grasp the most important thing, which is financial education, you just gonna make more money and have more debt. So
Right.
I believe that financial education should be the staple, because even with the skills and the money, you could just be a mess at a higher level. So I think the financial education should be the priority, because I think what ends up happening, at least for me, what I see is two things going on. Because some people like to say financial literacy, and some people say financial education. I believe financial literacy is just you understanding, you familiar with the financial concepts, the financial terms, but the financial education is when you implement.
Right.
Because if you can know all this stuff all you want, but if you don't use it, it don't do nothing. So
Right.
I think financial education is more important than both of those, because then with the education, you can actually fix some of that stuff, not even having the skills yet or the income, because you can start fixing right where you at currently today.
Right.
So that's my take on that.
Okay. Good deal. Good deal. All right, Sam, what you got? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think with what JC said and what Tim just said, I agree with both of them. It's really that applied knowledge, that's key. But like I've said in the past before, I've discovered with me personally that I actually was not hungry until all my other options were exhausted. Like me being in a situation where I have nothing, I'm limited on my options, limited on my paths that I can follow. And now I have really no other option but to figure things out, and it's better to figure it out when you have less than for you to bump your head when you have more and find yourself in the same space that you were in when you were making less money. So I think it's a combination of understanding the information, like Tim said, and then applying it while you have very little, and then you have an opportunity to be prepared for it. The one thing that I can say that I discovered prior to the pandemic happening, and really just everything that's happened right now, is me realizing and being honest with myself and saying, hey, you're not in the situation that you want to be in, and you're not getting the results that you really want. These are the actions that you need to take, and you need to be humble in this space and humble in that space in order for you to move yourself towards the goal that you want to achieve. So I can definitely say that you have to apply your knowledge. You can't just know the information. And it doesn't even matter if you're taking incremental steps along the way in order for you to get there, as long as you're working towards the things that you need to be attaining.
Good stuff, man. I think you all go ahead.
I just want to add this kind of to that as well, because one of the things that you see a lot of times is people gain their skills, they go back to school, they learn new skill sets, but they still don't have a tax strategy. So now they just they in the worst. They actually could end up being in a worse situation, because now they have more money to accumulate more debt. So now what do they do now? And then what ends up taking over is they can't focus on anything because of the stress of debt. So,
right.
Great
point. What I'll add to that, I mean, I think you guys have all made, man, you guys have pretty much made the point. There's not really much more to add to it. Yeah, I think, obviously debt is, so first of all, financial education, that's one reason why, although I do not, and I've been through Dave Ramsey's financial piece, I mean, years ago. I think it was probably back in 07. But I don't maneuver the way he does, but yet I push people to him because I realize a lot of people aren't willing to do what I'll do, but he will spoon feed them into something that will completely change their life. So although I don't necessarily, that's not my path, I think it is the beginning, that education is at least the beginning. And I think his path does help people maybe get some traction. And I think it's one of those things where when you get those little breakthroughs, because even for me, right, part of it for me, it's kind of crazy because I'm twofold. It's almost contradictive. I grew up really simple. So when I look at how far I've come, I'll take the risk because I realize I came from something so small and I felt I had like such a good childhood. It's like I always have a place to go back to. I could lose everything and I could pack up my bags and go right back to Virginia, and I always will have a place to lay my head. We have a home in the family that's not going anywhere. But on the other side, when I do start to think about even something as simple, if I want to go get steak and lobster, I don't have to think twice about it. And then thinking about the years of discomfort where I was trying to figure out how I was going to eat, I'm just afraid to go back to that, frankly. Like it's kind of the in-between, right? And I think a lot of people haven't pushed through. Like they haven't gotten to the other side. So it's just like people who, even with your credit, a lot of people with their credit, they got an apartment, right? They got their job, they got a car. So they have the basics. Now, they may be overpaying for that car, but they're getting where they can go, yada, yada. So they've not gotten to the point where it's like, okay, I got to really fix this. But when you realize the power of having your credit really in check, where you can literally get about anything you want, you go to another level that you're not trying to go back to no 515 credit score, so, but I think you guys make some great points. I think there is a deficit in skill. And I also think that we have a perception problem. And I think for me, that might be the biggest issue I see outside. The perception problem may be the biggest issue I see, honestly, outside of what you said, intentional. And the reason for that is, my whole career, I have been, I've had conversations with, whether it was women about their perception of like lawyers and things like that, and just flashy jobs. But the majority of my career, the people that work for me have made 90,000 plus. So, but logistics and supply chain aren't sexy. So at the same time, you have people not even know, they think this idea of 100,000 is something that, like, so for example, these were truck drivers, right? You can make 100,000 as a truck driver easy. Now, is the work easy? Absolutely not. But you can make 100,000. People don't know that, or they feel they're too good for it. There's always a perception issue. Then there's Instagram and all those things that have popped up, right, that have also added to it, where people don't, and we understand because we have been on camera, they think that even this is easy. So even the people that make six figures doing this, nobody is just chilling making six figures. Even when you do this, I mean, you do this for free and it's hard, let alone running a full production. So I think there's a big perception problem that, that people have. And we got to get past that, So I think you guys made some great points. I'm going to run through a couple more stats, and then I've got another question. So this says in 2019, 9% of people in the country, that being the U.S., earned at least 100,000, and that particular source is per Yahoo. And And then it says, yeah, the percentage doesn't seem like much. So perhaps it's better to think about how many Americans make over 100,000 in actual numbers instead of fractions. And that's why I really like this. It said at the end of the previous decade, the U.S. was home to 329 million people. That means 29.6 million workers were making over 100,000. Now, that was 2019, right? 2021, that number actually dropped slightly to 8.7, and bringing that number to 28.7 million, making making that figure of 100,000. Then it says the labor force consisted of just 162 million people. So it says, let's see, of 162 million people in 2021. So then what percent of Americans make over $100,000? It says 17.8% of all working people in the country. Slightly better, isn't it? So when you look at these, when you think about these numbers, and we think about in terms of 320 or 330 million people, right? And you see that 28.7 million are making 100,000. And we kind of jokingly talked about YouTube, how everybody's making 100,000. Does this, because there's a lot of talk about, genders and just dating and things like that, marriage. Does this suggest to you all that not all, but most people, right? And many of those people who are maybe the ones who are faking. And by the way, I'm not saying I have a problem with this. Things have changed. The state you're currently in is not where you must remain. But does this suggest, wealth engineering, that many of the women talking about, the independent women kick, and many of the men talking about, I'm a bachelor, I'm never getting married, that they're actually in a position where they need to be based off the statistics that we're looking at?
Well, this is an interesting question for me, specifically for me, because I was married and now I separated. I just moved into a new place
right.
alone, so I'm kind of like doing this experiment on that side as well. But so from the thing is, it really, at the end of the day, to answer that question, it depends what you want, right? Based on what I want, marriage, I would have to really consider it twice, 3 times, 4 times, and then if I do it, it has to be like basically a business deal as opposed to a marriage marriage certificate. But based on what I want, but not necessarily everyone wants the same thing. So for most people, it might be an idea to consider if you can kind of like have this partner where you can split the bills. That can help you save more. That can help you definitely reduce the expenses if you have to share a lot of the same resources. So that part is appealing. But then what happens if 50% of the marriage divorce, basically, right? So you have a 1 in 2 chance of going down that route. So yes, there is some pros into saving your account, but what happens in a breakup? Are you going to lose everything that you were saving for, right? Are you going to have to start all over again, right? So in that sense, is it better to just try to do it on your own and then be more safe on how you approach marriage? So these are interesting questions to ask. But from based on what I want, the marriage, this is not necessarily we're going to give what I want, but and I'm trying to build an empire, right?
right, yeah.
Trying to build an empire, so I gotta
Absolutely.
go down on the foundations and later brick on my own. And definitely anyone I'm adding to that empire is like a legal contract on my favor. That's basically the way I see it. But again, the way I'm thinking about it is, if a marriage fails, then at least my foundation is secure and I'm not going to have to start all over again. Because that's an interesting lesson I learned in the last couple of years is I put that much time into it. And then that's something that, hey, I did get some benefit, but now you have to start all over again. It may not be a good thing. But going back to that question you were saying, an interesting thing that happens now that it seems that intuitively women are saying they're associating six figures, especially 100K, as a safety net in a way, and that has become a criteria to kind of like select the best possible mate. Some of the things are like, hey, we want them to be 6 feet, 6 packs, 6 figures, right? So that
Right.
becomes
Take something else, yeah.
Hey man. So yeah, that becomes now a standard, and the people, it's kind of like interesting because people are associating that with safety, because they're like, if this guy is making 6 figures, then there's a level of safety that I can at least get from this guy that makes it interesting. So that was 3-4 years ago, not necessarily today, but they
Right.
still say that they haven't catch up to the new reality of life yet. So you might hear 5 years from now, it might be 200,000.
Right,
So,
right. So right now it should be like 125, right? Maybe 127,000, right?
yeah, man. The 100,000 now, depending on where you live, it is the new 50,000, man. It
Yeah.
is.
Much agreed. Much agreed. Intentional. Do you think, and much of this obviously, because we really are in this YouTube space, so we do hear a lot of the talk and the nonsense, and some of it is rightfully so, is correct. Do you think, based off those statistics, that it would suggest, whether you're saying whether it's to say that people, men and women, probably need each other to have a decent lifestyle, or should be together, or should be working towards that to really be able to accomplish some things and move a community in the right direction? What do you think about that? Do you think it's a need at this point for most individuals, or that and I do want to be very clear. No, I don't want to get between the way, because my attitude has always been, I'm going to do, and my wife and I both work, but my attitude is always, we want to be able to live in a house where I can pay all the bills and she can. Like, we both make enough to where, because I just like that type of cushion, right? That's just how we are. But so I don't want to take away from, it's not about saying men should just team up with women and all that. It's more so just about the idea of, is that probably the best interest with the data that we're seeing, to be able to survive or to be able to push forward?
Well, I would start by saying, when it comes to the data, it's very skewed data. Because the first thing is, I bet you a bigger percentage of those households that's making over 100K is in the more higher cost of living cities.
That's very good point.
So with that being said, yeah, and that even sounds good. The number sounds good that more people are making it, but it's actually bad, because if it's in the major cities that they're doing it, it really don't equate to no money. So that's one. But then two, in these YouTube streets, a lot of people say they made 6 figures, but you got to keep in mind, it's based off of what? Household income.
Yes.
So that means normally more than one person. So the numbers, to me, is, you got to really read into it. It's kind of, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Wait,
yeah.
so, I could have done that. I could have said 6 figures.
Like, we're talking that type of game.
Man.
Yeah.
So really, so the first thing is, so a lot of people that's saying that, they made 6 figures, most of it is cap. Because I guarantee you that the biggest percentage of those households that is earning it is in the larger cities. And the reason why is because the area, the cost of living has to accommodate more.
Right.
So, I think that's the first thing. So with that being said, if we was to break it out to all the major cities, you will find that that number, the 34%, drastically decrease when you consider just the normal standard of living cities.
Right. Great. Yeah. Great.
Mm.
Great point.
Yeah, there's a big difference between California and some Georgia maybe.
Yep, California, San Francisco, New York, Seattle, certain parts of Florida. I mean, it's some expensive places out there. So, but with that being said, I think that I think most people are just saying it because it's a talking point. I think especially in this particular space, is everybody is saying they're making it is because one, it's a talking point. But two, I think a lot of people are saying they are making it because it sounds attractive, and men are saying it because they know that's what the women want. So
Right.
I mean, so because
Absolutely.
because for me, everybody that talk about it, I never hear them mention about, but you really don't bring home six figures.
Yeah.
They never talk about the tax portion of it. It's all about income, but you don't spend actual income. You don't spend your gross, you spend net. And that's where I think the whole conversation is kind of really entertaining. So
Huge difference between gross and net, man.
Let me add that, you guys are engineers. That's another part of it, is when people are mentioning this, it's like, you're the only one here. We don't know what you do. So, I mean, if you want to, and like I say, I know, mine is not sexy. You'll just look up a distribution manager who's been in the game for 15 years. And you don't have to be 15 years. It can be 5 years. You can look up what people do. I have no problem telling people what I do. It's people that you make these figures, right? But you're on the internet all day. I mean, so there's definitely you're right. There's definitely a lot of cap in that. And if people would just focus on getting that skill set up, it would essentially get them there. I mean, whether even for example, and I'm not saying coding boot camps are the way over whether you go to, college for it or whatever. I'm not even skilled enough myself in that area to say that, but I'm sure we have people who will tell you, hey, a coding boot camp will still get you paid. So it's like, rather than sitting around faking it, you have all these options, right? So I think you make some great points, man. I think you make some great points, and it definitely matters where you live. And I'm going to ask you, Sim, and then I'm going to give you some stats that are kind of crazy about household income by state. Sim, so what do you think? Do you think people need to team up?
I mean, I'm going to say something a little bit different than JC and Tim. I think along the lines of the first rule you should be following as an adult is having a tax strategy, right? If you're following a tax strategy, when you're married, filing jointly, and there's a big income disparity, it's been recorded. As long as you're not in one of the higher tax brackets, it's recorded and it's understood that you should be paying less in taxes than two people who make a lot of money. So, like, let's say, for instance, if you make $100,000, right, and your wife makes no money, it allows that income, that $100,000, to be distributed between two people, as opposed to one person that's paying has a tax burden of $100,000.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it allows you to go into a lower tax bracket. There's a concept called the marriage penalty and the marriage bonus. So the more of a disparity there is between one spouse to the other, the less tax burden that you have imposed upon you, because now you're distributing your salary towards your spouse that makes less money. So then it looks like both of you are making a lower salary together. So it works out in that sense. But beyond that, I think that you just have to find someone like JC was saying, someone that you can cooperate with, that you can really formulate a plan. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get married. One of the strategies that I heard today, gentleman said, we're going to buy, I'm going to buy a quadplex by myself. And then my fiance, she's going to buy a quadplex by herself before we get married. And then once we get married, we buy another quadplex together, you know, but it allows us to be able to leverage getting access to real estate that's considered to be single family. And we get an opportunity to get access to it based upon our own income before we actually come together. But you really have to have a tax strategy. And for me, that's a part of the conversation, even in dating. I'm asking questions about what someone's sentiments are centered around, like future planning. Are you prioritizing future planning for retirement, or are you traveling all your money away? You know, so those are the questions that I'm asking, and I'm discovering that people are not really ready to have that conversation. You know, they don't want to hear that. They'd much rather just say, "Hey, you know, listen, I'm not focused on the future because I might not be here. I want to be able to travel. I'm a traveler. You know, I'm a global entry and, you know, TSA, and, you know, I want somebody that I can travel with. All the while, you're not maxing out your tax advantage accounts, you know. So,
are you single, Simsia?
Say it again.
Are you single? Or you...
Yeah, I'm single. I'm single. I'm interviewing, you know.
No, that's great point.
That's a great point. Because Sim, I had a young lady tell me, and all I just asked was, did she know what a estate plan and a living will was? And she told me that was getting too personal. And I say, yeah, well,
it ain't gonna work.
It's looking dim.
Absolutely. And me, you know, and I will say, me and Intentional, when we talk on the phone, we talk about some of this stuff. You know, we and that's why I really want to ask this question, because I do feel, and I do have that luxury. So I always say I'm not acting like it's easy out there, but I do have the luxury of a woman who is also dedicated to working hard. So while there's these concepts of, you know, a lot of men want to be able to say, hey, I pay for everything. As I said, for me, the position is I can pay for everything, but why would I not double up at least for a certain amount of years, right? And I know that if you get married at a certain age and you decide to double up for 15 years, well, then you should be in a position, if you've invested right, where anyone can basically do whatever they want to work. Yeah, they can work whatever they want to work, do whatever they want to do. So, so absolutely. And something I want to point out that was pretty crazy. And looking at this, when I look at the medium household income, no state as of 2019 was over 100,000. None, as a median anyway. And what's interesting, and I know this because I used to live up there, and trust me, anytime you mention PG County, Maryland, and I lived right outside of PG County, people are going to tout that because that is a high income individual for any race. We're talking, it doesn't matter. It's the highest. It's basically about the highest for any race outside of DC itself. So I thought it was interesting in looking at this in as far as medium, it was saying that in 2019 for the United States was 65,000, but in Washington, D.C. was 92,000, Maryland, 86,000. Then you got Massachusetts, 85, Jersey, 85. So it's very interesting that you have like California is fifth, Hawaii is fourth, but Hawaii is very, very expensive. But it's just funny, you know, and then New York's down at like 14. So when you really think about those breakdowns, it's tough. I mean, ultimately, it's tough for a lot of it's tough for a lot of people. I mean, it just is. And crazy enough, even looking at Maryland, now, you know, that was 2019. I was making I was not quite making so Maryland is right at 87,000. I was not quite making 100,000 at when I was in Maryland. I might have been, if I remember correctly, maybe around 90, 91 back then. And that was like in 2014 or 15. So even I moved there in 2013. So even even just kind of gauging it, looking at it like that, and that was just me, one person, right? With a lot of student loan debt and a lot of other stuff. So it wasn't like it was glamorous at the time either. But that just goes to show, even in 2019, the medium household in the highest place, which is DC, was 92,000. And I don't know if all our congressional members would be counted under DC or the state they're from. It's probably the state. I guess it depends, but I mean, and we know what they get paid, right? So it just goes to show you, when it comes to this income, I think six figures, I think it really came from a place where, yeah, if you had six figures, you were really doing something. But fast forward now, it doesn't necessarily mean you're doing something. And I would maintain that if we're talking about six figures as just in $100,000 a year, to me, the way to get ahead will always be investing. And I would maintain that you need the six figures from one person, and then you need the other person to work to really get ahead. That's the way and I'm not saying it has to be six figures. It could, it could be 50,000. And I think you can get there on your own, but it's all about time at that point. How many years have you been investing to get there? I mean, to start at 40 is going to be a problem.
Yeah, I slightly disagree, man. There's one thing I slightly disagree on. No, one person needs to be making 100K, and that other person needs to be working too. Like,
oh no. I think I agree with you on that. I definitely agree, but I still believe you can make it. If the second person's not necessarily making 100,000, I still think you can make it. I don't think it has to be two people making 100,000.
Oh no, yeah, you don't have to, right? Not yet.
Right, not yet.
Not yet.
Right.
Not yet, but right now, especially if the other person is not going to make 100K, they have to have their minds on the same vision, working towards investing. Because that's exactly what happened to me. I was the one making just barely 100K. My wife was making more than 100K back then, when I was like 29.
Right.
But the only thing we were trying to do back then was trying to save the 20% or 15% for our house. That's it. That's all we were trying to do. And it wasn't like a triplex or something that we can rent and make some income out of it. It was just like a regular home, like 4-bedroom, 2-bedroom. That's it. So it wasn't really like investing minded, right? And that was a mistake. That was a mistake back then. If we're both combining, which is what I'm currently working on right now. If we're both combining, and instead of actually buying a house, we were trying to buy like a 4-plex, a 6-plex, or a business. Right now, I'm learning that you can buy a business for the same price as a house.
Yes,
and that business can be making $1 million in gross income.
Right,
like,
simply because someun's retiring.
Like, really?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a friend who did that. We actually celebrated. He bought a boat, a business. The boat was a business. There was a restaurant. There was a dance room. The boat can hold about 50 people. And then it was a legit business. He was renting that to companies that wanted to go on the water, have parties, Christmas parties and all. And then the guy was retiring and he just bought it, man. And it was like really? That's like a nice money. And you buy it, you have the employees already there. Great. And then I'm like, great, that's a good idea, man. And then the same thing you can do instead of buying a house. So now I'm seeing this and I'm like, well, yeah, if back then, let's say you were talking about teaming up, that's good. You can team up if that can help you get there faster. That's okay. But you have to have the same mindset. And it has to be in an investing, multiplying your wealth type of way, not just buying a liability that you think is an asset. Because if it's not putting money in your pocket, I agree with Robert Kiyosaki, it's not an asset.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this brings us to the point, and let me just call this out real quick. So we all the way up crypto trading says we need this transfer of wealth to happen in the next 2 years. Crypto will do it. So obviously, me being a crypto guy, I definitely agree. And I will tell you, I know JC has seen it as well. One thing crypto does do for you, especially in a bull market, it makes you realize 100K is not really a lot at all. Because I mean, I had times when, I mean, you know, you can make that in a couple months. I mean, just now, will you keep it is the question, right? But you start to see money being made so quickly, it really does make you start to think about, you go from the thoughts of 6 figures to, whoa, 7 figures, multi 7 figures is really possible if you really take hold of it. But then again, we're back to the level of, are you willing to acquire that skill? And that always comes at a cost of time. It just comes at a cost of time. So that's an excellent point. So one question, and we won't stay on here too much longer, but I definitely love this I definitely love this topic. What do you guys think?
Hold on. Me and Tim didn't answer the question, man.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Is it the white shirt? Is it the white shirts or something?
It's the comment section hiding you, man.
Right. It might be. Go ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
Tim, they can only see our teeth. That's all.
What was the question again?
Right. No, well, I think we actually answered the question and then got on to talking about, I don't know if we asked a new questions. I know we got on to talking about just the income of, you know, how DC and Maryland, those areas were more so, you just looking at, there's no area really under 100,000 or over 100,000 rather. So yeah, I don't know that did I ask another question?
Nah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. What about, so when it comes to this income, what is the solution as far as, or let's say this, what is that number? Is there a number that, is a safe number now? Like, as in, do we need to readjust? It? Now, I shoot for the stars. My number will take care of everybody, but that's just how I think. But what's a realistic number?
Go ahead, Tim. See, you were eager to talk. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, we can start with Tim. You go ahead. Or either one of you.
Man, I'll let Tim go first. You know.
Okay.
I think the real number is 250K. I think 20 grand a month give you enough where you can have something left over, take care of all your taxes, have a strategy, be able to invest, and be able to have your financial foundation all settled, and you be able to fully maximize all tax advantages.
Right.
Hold up. So you said 250.
Yep.
Hold up, 250.
That's the accredited investor, right? That puts you in the accredited investor range.
Well, you'll be
200 is at 200, but 250 that'll make up for, because if you put your stuff in the right thing, you're not even gonna be paying the higher taxes, because you need to be shifting more of your money to stuff that pay capital gains. So that way, because you'll be at the lowest tax burden. But then also you'll be able to fully maximize all the tax advantages that you'll be given, but also you'll get tax advantages because if you marry and you make that, it go back to what Sim was talking about the disparity in income, so forth and so on. So
yeah, and even if you make that gross, 250 gross net, you're still basically averaging over 10 to 12K a month, right? So you could live easy on 5-6K a month, and then put the rest to work to multiply for you. So I like that number for you. Go ahead.
Because in 10 years, that's 2.5 million. 10 years, if you invested, let's just take half of that. If you invested, let's just do 1 million. If you invested 1 million properly, that money should grow to a deca million.
Yeah,
if you do it right.
Easy. Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Cynthia.
But Tim, you have to also understand that your modified adjusted income must be under 140 as an individual and under 144 in 2022, modified adjusted. So you would have to be making that money, probably a good portion of it in one person's salary, and then the other one can't make anything close to that. Otherwise, you're going to be disqualified. As far as the Roth goes, but the
But
There's
it's
no such
other
thing as making more money disqualified.
but I'm not talking about the Roth.
Yeah.
I'm talking about starting a SEP IRA. See, we getting a little bit when you start making that type of money, the Roth, you don't qualify for that stuff. You got to now go start qualifying for the more higher level stuff.
Yeah.
That still give you tax strategies.
yeah.
You get more option with more money, man. That's the problem you want.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What's your number, Simsia?
Because here's the thing, with that type of money, somebody should have a business and hire their spouse. Now they get some leverage. If their child become of working age, now they can hire their child, and now they get another tax benefit, but more leverage.
Come on, Tim. You're giving away too many secrets, man. You're giving away too many secrets. Listen, yeah, I mean, like with that income and being able to hire your children, that is like a ninja trick from like no other place, because the money that they can actually earn as an employee of your business from the time that they're babies up until they turn 18, it's far more money than you could put away in 529, and you have more of an opportunity of really deciding where they can really put that money away. But this is not investing advice. This is just information,
Right.
So
what's your number, man? What's your number?
Make sure. So I'm in a similar conversation. I'm about, I'd say probably between 200 and 250.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at least where the conversation's starting, honestly.
Yeah.
Because
what's your number?
We have to capture that before the government changes their accredited investor criteria to 10 million. So we definitely have to make sure we take advantage of that.
So my number actually is funny. My number is actually 240. So you can say 250, but mine is actually passive. So mine is 240. I'd like to make, mine is 20K a month, and I would solely like that to be in real estate. And everything else above that is just whatever, so I would like to get, now some of that, that may be sometime down the road, but mine ultimately would be, 20,000 a month. And that's real estate, and that's net, so, and then everything else on top of that is extra gravy, is the way that I would like to get it to. But also what I know is getting, and it can be less than that in real estate, but I know that getting that number in real estate will allow me to, when you free up that you can really do whatever you want, you just got time to start really thinking about how you go out and get it. You know what I mean? Because even from, and there's just so many facets. I can go and work for someone else, right? I can trade crypto, right? I can do YouTube. There's just so many options. So that's why I say passive. And I'm not saying anything's truly passive, although I actually do get property managers. So mine really is, for the most part, really passive. I don't really do much on the properties, other than you have to watch the watchman, or that's the most part. But yeah, that's the number. Either way you get it, I think $250,000 is I think $250,000 is realistic. I think that's the number that really sets you up. And I think over the long haul, because I think one thing we probably at our ages realize, it's not easy. Just the I think me and Intentional Millionaire were talking about this. You got to go through, you know what I'm saying? You go, just like the markets go through cycles, you go through cycles. And I went from times where, and the money may not be that far apart, but I feel like I'm hanging on by a thread, and I feel like I'm balling. And it can be 3 months apart and nothing much has changed, but it's just this, you're always waiting on that next breakthrough to go up to that next level. And that's why I do have a fear for those who, certainly my age, right, but even younger, that haven't even thought about the concept of, because for those that don't even think about the concept of trying to obtain wealth and things like that, you're going to get hit over the head with the fact that you won't even be talking about wealth. You'll be just talking about trying to eat. You know what I'm saying? So that's what really I kind of just feel for people. I just really feel for them because some people just don't get it. And more power to those who are just content. But I've just always said, look, people do crazy stuff. I can be trusted with money. I'm gonna do the right thing, so I might as well be the one that has it. That's just my. I can be trusted to do the right with it, so let me have it. You know. So
and here's the reason why I just want to add this to that. The reason why I believe though 250, but also why you have to have a strategy. So that way, because we as people, I personally, I understand the long-term strategy and all that. I get it. But in the same token, I want to have fun today. so
Yeah.
the benefit of doing that, why I say financial education, when you get financial education and you implement, you'll be able to have fun now, but also plan for later. If you don't have that, you got to make a choice to do one or the other. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, in my opinion, is they don't take the time to understand financial education. They may be financially literate, but they're not financially educated. But also with financial education, that's what you really get a chance to pass down to the next generation. That's true wealth. Because the wealth is not just the monetary aspect. If you don't pass down the education with the wealth, they're just going to lose the money to the next generation anyway.
Right.
Facts. Let me chime in. Quickly. I kind of wanted to go last a bit because I knew my number was going to go higher, but I didn't want to like sway anyone.
You don't want to rain on nobody's parade.
Yeah, but my bare minimum number that I want to achieve before it's 365. And at first it started as a vanity number because I can say, hey, if I get 265 every year consistently, I can say every day during the year I made $1,000.
Right.
So that's basically how it started first. But then the more I learn about not just making the money, but how you keep it and how you multiply it too, I definitely want 2/3 of that. I would make or 3/4 of that, however you want to slice it, to be on more than not just linear income, because there is 4 ways you can really make money. Either linear income, you work for someone, let's say a fixed amount of hours. There is leverage, maybe you have a business, you're leveraging other people's time. And then there is also passive, right? You buy something once and then it keeps working for you. Or YouTube video, for example, could be a way of passive income. You made a video once and it always generates money. There's also windfall. You buy a crypto today, 2 years from now, it gets a 10x, you sell it then. That's another way of making money. So the least tax of all these 4 is the last 3, and the most tax is the linear income. So if you're making 265, but you're making most of that on linear income, you get taxed way more. And on that tax bracket where I live right now, that would be 54%. So if I can manage to make a way to 3/4 of my income yearly is made other than linear income, and then I can say that $1,000 a day is the amount of money that I make, and that's definitely the way I want to set it up, my income life. But all that to say that for people that are listening, they might think, yeah, these numbers are crazy. I'm barely making 50. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. What do I do? I definitely would say, to go back to your question, what was the solution to about the 100K? Is it enough? What is the solution? You definitely got to start with skills, high income skills. When I was in my 33, 34 years old, I started to really working on a strategy to increase my high income skills. I made a list of 7 high income skills I want to master by the time I die. So basically, I work on every year. I check to see where I'm at on that on that list and how much skills did I get. So now I got one. I'm working on my next one. And basically, my next one is I'm trying to see what's the highest I can reach that level, and putting a plan to get there, right? And every time I increase one skills, I go apply it on a job. I use that income that I'm getting from job to put it on my savings, to put it for my business, So I'm trying to multiply. The more money that I'm making, the more I can have and put away and save and multiply my wealth. So that's definitely what I would say. Make a plan for learn your skills. Your skills leads to more income, and then with more income leads to more savings, more investing that you can make later. And then it starts slow, but it builds up fast once you get a momentum.
Good deal. So here's what we're going to do. This is just going to be fun. We'll round this out because I don't want to keep everybody long, but we're going to round this out, and I'm going to read a couple stats, and really this is going to be kind of, are you guys surprised? So if I had to name this segment,
Stop the cap.
it would it would be Stop the Cap. Now I love these statistics a lot because it's one thing to in your mind be on, be a chat ninja, right? But when you start to see statistics, and this article is really great. So I'm going to read a couple statistics and ask, are you guys surprised, right? And here's what it says. First of all, when it comes to men, male workers in general, nearly 1/4, almost 1/4 of all male workers are 100K earners. And to be exact, that's 23.4%. Now, when it comes to, this says 90,839 single black male millionaires. Millennials. 90,000 single black male millennials make six figures. The total number of black $100,000 earners aged 25 to 40 was 170,914 in 2019, representing 2% of the total number of people in the group. If we're talking specifically about the percentage of black males making over 100,000, that's 1.1% of the whole group. That leaves 80,075 black female millionaire. I keep on saying millionaires, millennials earning 100,000 or more. And then here's the last little piece of that. Although the salary stats favor men, women have statistically higher education. It says educational achievements. Case in point, when it comes to black millennials, 354,040 more women than men have at least a bachelor's degree. Yet 10,764 more men earn 100,000. So, why I would name this Stop the Cap? Look at that. Now, the most people I see on these panels that are capping are 25 to 40. Yet only 170,000 black men, right, are making that much, are making 100,000. And I want to be very clear. Nothing's wrong with not making 100,000. To me, it's the motivation of clearly moving forward. The problem is when you cap like you are and you're not. And this statistic, I've literally been on panels where 100% of black men are making 100,000. And I'm like, how is this possible? So these numbers, 2 points I want to point out. Are you guys surprised when you hear these numbers versus what you see? And I'll be clear, I'm not, because I knew it was cap. And when it comes to what we do hear some black women say on specific panels, but I've heard people kind of rebuttal this. Are you guys surprised that black men, because we always hear that black women are more educated than black men, but are you guys surprised that that doesn't necessarily mean that they're making more money? And I myself, again, was not, but I've known, not specifically the statistics, but I had a good idea. So what's you guys' thoughts? What's your thoughts? What you can go ahead. I'll go ahead and let you start. Intentional millionaire.
Listen,
he couldn't help himself, man.
I'm chomping at the bit. Listen, the first thing is the reason that number is not surprising because women are more educated, but they get more degrees that's not marketable. I mean,
Good point.
They get
Right.
more psychology degrees, more basket weaving degrees, more,
Okay.
Communication
you
degrees.
know, all
Right.
these
So you're saying, yeah. So
education.
it comes down to what those degrees are in.
Right. So one, they get more degrees. That's not the most marketable when you talk about making more income. That's one. The next thing is they have more student loan debt.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
so what you have to know, depending on some jobs, they look at your debt, because if especially you think about working in the federal service or whatever, that's part of the requirement, because if you have higher debt and lower income, you're more or less to be a risk from a security standpoint.
Right.
So that's another thing. And then the last thing, I was laughing because of what TLA, he's in the chat, and what he said: if 100K ain't enough, then our community is screwed. LOL. Because I found that very hilarious, because on all the panels, everybody make 100,000.
Right. Shout out to TLA and Natasha Vincent as well.
So that's the reason why I say that, yeah, they're more educated. And of course, they're going to be more educated, because you also have to factor in more men are more likely to go out and get trades that they can go make more money.
Right.
So they could go get skills that, regardless of what the economy is doing, they can still make money. And that's where the biggest equalizer really come into play. So I just think that, yeah, that sound good. It's an ego booster, but when it comes to the monetary aspect, it's not as great as it really seemed. And the numbers just prove that.
Yeah. I gotta agree with you on that. I definitely gotta agree with you on that. Yeah. And I, like I said, I wasn't surprised. It's just funny though, when you look at the actual statistic, it's even more glaring. It's pretty bad. Sam, you go ahead.
Perry, did you say how many men did you say were making over 100?
Well, and so in terms of males, in general, it's actually 23.4% of the workforce. And then when it comes to black males specifically, and they are talking millennials between 24 and 40, that number is 90,839 make six figures. And that number is off of well, let's see, 2000
Black demographics, maybe.
Right. Yeah. And that number basically was out of 2019. But now when you talk about, so for males, it's 90,839. But when we talk about, all, we're talking 170,914. That's males and females. So 2% for the total group.
170, you said?
170,000. Yep. Almost 171,000. That's black men and women, but just of men, black men is 90,000.
So I mean that says that the 60, what is that? That's like 2/3. That's like maybe, if we have 90 and then there's about 60 or 170. No, that's 80. But yeah,
right, for women it was 80.
Yeah,
for women it was 80,000, and it was 90,000 for men.
So I mean, if the men who are making 100 and the women that are making 100 come together, that leaves 10,000 people that all the other women have an opportunity to choose from.
Exactly.
Come on now. What's the compromise, man?
Man.
Listen,
Why you gotta go that way,
where's
man?
the compromise? Listen, where can we get them to line up at? I mean,
That's that number is we have a problem. I mean, there's a problem out there. So, and that does allude to the fact of, so two things. So you spoke intentionally, you spoke to the debt, right? The education. Well, you didn't speak to the debt so much as you were speaking to the type of degree it was. But you might have spoke to the debt. The debt is an even bigger issue.
Yep.
So when you get that debt there, and then you're like, hey, well, I want a person that's my equal, you start to run into some problems. I mean, you just start to run into it's a mathematical nightmare. It just is.
Are they supposed to be sharing? I'm trying to figure it out, you know. Tim, what you think, man? You know, are they taking shifts? So I'm trying to figure it out because there's a big disparity with that, man. I was gonna say, question, right? When we talking about debt, are we talking about student loan debt, or are we just talking about consumer debt?
Well, we were just, I was just mentioning student loan, but it's everything. It's really everything.
Well, I mean, I don't know, man. It's been interesting. There's a reasonable population of people. I'm not gonna say which people that have no intentions of ever paying off their student loan debt, you know?
Right.
So I don't know, man. But there's someone who's making 100,000 debt free. Do they have more posture than someone who's making 100,000 with debt? Like, should we be weighing them exactly the same? Like as far as what Tim and I are talking about, right? When we're having conversations with young ladies, right? We're saying, okay, like I learned from Dave Ramsey, right? So I started my journey with like you, Perry. In 2015, I started to ask the questions that Dave Ramsey was asking. And I started to try to butter it up and say, when do you see yourself paying off your student loan debt, right?
Right.
And some of the women were saying, never, when I die, you know? So it was really shocking to discover the mindset that some people have. That like they have no intentions of ever paying it off. So then it kind of forces you into the situation of asking yourself, wow, do I see myself being with this person because this person is not being what someone else might say financially responsible, fiscally responsible. You know, they're saying that they're not going to pay for the things that they signed up for in the beginning. So I don't know. It's a little bit scary, you know?
Yeah. And I maintain this, right? When you look at it, I think that it's kind of crazy. Much of it is, you know, you go on to get that master's. I maintain that if you're wanting that man that's making, especially if we're talking a black man that's making that six figures, you have a better chance if you just got the bachelor's and are willing to, you know, and are willing to be to meet those. I don't like to say demands, but are willing to
work with.
Be more in a traditional, being more in a traditional marriage rather than going that extra level. Because let's face it, when you start to look at, oh, okay, you got 60 versus 180, there's just brothers that are gonna be like, oh my goodness, I can't take on that debt. So that's very, very interesting. And I do want to say that just in looking at a statistic, when it does come to black women, 60 or 22% more in debt, it says, in their white counterparts. And I didn't read enough to see if that meant everyone, but still 22% of it's a lot. It's a whole lot. So
we have TLA's comment right there too. My bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shout out to TLA.
Salute TLA. TLA say that's why men need to get prenups.
Listen, man. We can put that on every stream, man.
Listen, but here's the other side of that. The reason why it's so critical, because first, when you look at financial data, it says that women are least likely to deal with finances.
Right.
So that's the first gauge why a woman has to understand his risk is higher. In most risk situations, it's higher just because of the financial piece alone. It goes back to the financial education.
Right.
A woman could be financially literate, just like Sim just mentioned. She knows she got student loan debt. She know what it is. She knows she can't just file a divorce. It's going to stay with her. However, she's not implementing financial education by having the mindset to even want to pay it off. So she just knows. So she has it. She's literate, but she ain't gonna do nothing about it because it's the owner's going to man now to have to come in and save the day.
But you gotta understand, in her perception, there is plenty of men that are making six figures, right? So why would she pay it off when she can use her beauty, her natural God-given talent to get someone else to pay for it?
Well, because she grown and independent. She don't need no man. Remember?
Well, I do feel like it's crazy. I do feel like we we work through things too. And this is funny. TLA doesn't even know this, but I actually was considering going back to school and going to law school. Like around the time I was introduced to TLA's channel, when he started to move, kind of rise up, but it was more so just like, hey, let me see. I just want to see if I can do it really and kind of get into it. And I was probably going to have about half of it paid for out of pocket. And then I heard TLA talk and I was like, nah, I'm not going to spend that. But the point I'm making is I still wasn't going to do anything until I rationally thought through it. Right. Like I wasn't going to go rush out and just do it and just spend money to do it. And if I wasn't going to be able to pay for a part of it, it wasn't even going to be on the table. So I just make that point to think some of these degrees that are people are getting, it's not really adding value. So you got to at least look and say, okay, if I get this degree, let's say it's going to cost me $50,000 and it's going to be more than that, but let's say $50,000, right? What am I going to make off that next job? At least see if it'll pay for it. Will it at least pay for it? I mean, but I don't think people think through that. I just think there's this rush to get all those degrees and it's digging a bigger hole. So,
and going back to that topic, we're talking about high income skills. That's definitely one way to do it too. That's actually, remember I was telling you, I have a list of skills, 7 high income skills I want to master. I got one. I'm looking for my next one. Well, I actually negotiate with my job. I'm saying this is the position I want to rise up on. This is the skill I need to. I don't have them yet. I need a certification. Can you guys help me pay for it? They're like, you know what? We like the idea of that. We like that if you have this skill, that's going to make our department better. So
right.
We'll fund you. We'll fund it to you. So I'm this morning I was actually looking into different schools, different online classes I can take. So there's lots of things you can do that way, not necessarily going to school. And just like you too, there was a time in my life I was considering either going back to school to learn more skills or doing something else. And I decided to actually start doing a business. So I actually run a tech startup, my own tech startup before. And that actually got me into school and got my free tuition for 2 years. And I basically have like an MBA version of that free. And all the assignment was on my business. So there's a lot of things that you can do to actually learn skills and not necessarily having to increase your debt. Because going back to that study you were saying, I think I calculated that it was about, if you're talking about 25 to 40 years old, black man, that's about, they're putting the about 8.5 or anywhere between 8.5 and 9 million people that would fit in that area. And then you're saying 170,000 are making 100K. I'm not surprised to see those numbers. I'm definitely not surprised. They're consistent with other stats as well. But yeah, there's a big problems in our community. And if only 170,000 men, people in general, 90,000 men are making 100K, then we definitely have a huge a problem in our community, because there's no way 90,000 men can service all these women out there. So
listen, man, we got a lot of Gucci belts out there, man, and
right, we do
all these designer product placements out there. So I know there's a lot more than 170,000 that are out there wearing those Gucci belts. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say TLA said now I will say I was obviously older and already had a degree and was working and making good money, but he said honestly I didn't think through that. I was an English major. LOL, I almost effed myself going into it. So he didn't think through it. He's just like, boom, I'm rolling, man. But obviously we know that things have obviously turned out well for TLA. And shout out to TLA again as well. TLA's for anyone in the chat that doesn't know, he's definitely inspired a lot of people. And that is important. That's extremely important, because that's half of the problem we're in is there's nobody been inspiring. We have been inspired by people that we cannot be, right? And I feel like what TLA has done is at least it's achievable if you're willing to work hard. So that definitely does mean something to me and a lot of other people who have obviously expressed that. So I do want to give you guys a chance to make closing, to make some closing remarks. What I do want to wrap up, and we kind of did our stop the cap session. I do want to point out the median income of Black households was, and this was in 2020, was $45,870. Man, the cap on YouTube is nuts, man. We're talking about the medium Black household, the whole house, and we have people fronting like they were making double than that on the regular. It's crazy. It has been absolutely crazy, but it is what it is. I'm not going to knock the hustle. It just is what it is. It says the highest medium income. So it does break out. It says out of the 4 demographic groups, Asian, white, non-Hispanic, Hispanic, and Black, the average annual income of a Black household is the smallest. That median is $45,870. The highest median income is that of Asian households, $94,000. And I know Lee knows pretty much where I live in Georgia, and it's highly populated with Asians. Maybe outside of like I would actually maintain maybe outside of New York and California, it may be the highest Asian population in kind of a small area. And also being in real estate, when I see those numbers like 94,000, not surprised whatsoever. Not surprised, because I see it. I see houses owned like $1 million houses. And it's funny, Lee was talking about on his stream, what $2 million to get you in Atlanta. I literally am seeing $2, $3, $4 million homes owned. Asians own them. So they and they're big investors and things like that. So it says that leaves white households in second at 74,912, and Hispanic ones as second to last at 55,321. Now, that little snippet alone is something we should probably do a stream on one day, because that's a problem in terms of where we're at and talking about why we're there and kind of getting an understanding on that. But I've really enjoyed this. I think great points have been made. So what I'll ask you guys in more so in closing remarks, what is it, let alone leaving the $100,000 a year alone and just thinking about what is it? And for me, I'm someone who really does, race has never mattered to me. I mean, where I'm from, there's not that many African Americans per se where I'm from to begin with. So I just, race has never been that big of a deal to me. I'm all about people in general, and I really am about their character and who they are. So bringing it back to just the wider picture, what is it? And I'll start with you. Matter of fact, on this one, I will go ahead and start with Intentional Millionaire. What is it that what are 3 things in said order people would need to focus on? And let's say people that are, we'll say 20 and up, right? What do they need to focus on to just simply be in position to live a life that they'd like to? What do they need? What are the things that they need to focus on, and not just looking at a number, but just what can they do, whether it's education, whatever you think it is, the 3 biggest things you think that they should focus on to be able to achieve what they'd like to, and to be able to just simply survive, and not just survive, but thrive, we'll say, in America anyway. And we'll say North America rather.
I say 1, financial education. That's always going to be the staple because you're in a capitalistic society and you need to know finances. That way you can be able to compete from a capital standpoint. The second thing I would say, they need to find a mentor. Mentor could be whatever. It could be YouTube. It could be somebody in person. It could be somebody that already didn't walk the walk, and now you want to learn from them because they already didn't pave the way and made a path. I say that's the next thing. And then the last thing is I think they need to just get skills that they can make money outside of their 9 to 5. That could be YouTube. That could be, just learning soft skills, teaching another language, whatever it may be. But they need to learn how to generate income outside of their 9 to 5. And in that process, I think they're going to learn some things that can help them be self-aware where they can make some more money. The reason why that's so critical, I say those things, is because I say it in that order because I think that order matters. Personal finance, individual finance allows you as the individual to have to step outside of yourself and learn some things. It forces you, personal finance forces you to either bump your head and bust it to the white meat, or it forces you to go out and seek the heat by learning and doing stuff, but taking action, because the only way you're going to seek more heat is you either did something wrong and it didn't work, or you did something that did work and you want to do more of it. That's the first thing. The second thing why you need a mentor is because it's no one man army to never get anything done. So you have to find a team of somebody you can kind of bounce ideas off of. They'll be able to push you and see, because they're going to start seeing things in you didn't see in yourself. And then the last thing is, learning skills. I mean, that's the only way. You got to look at learning other skills. It allows you to stay open-minded so you can continue to learn, to be able to feed yourself. And your feeding could be personal improvement, financial improvement, whatever improvement that you need to help increase your self-awareness, but also your skill set when you're increasing your awareness. So that's what would be the things that I would say that anybody can kind of do. And I would say that they really should focus on, because I don't think it's no one size fit all, but I think that is a way that most general people, especially someone that 20-year-old, can do right out of the gate.
Good deal. Good deal. How about you, Sim? What's your thoughts?
Excuse me, guys. Hey, so this is similar to what Tim just stated. If I was talking to the 20-year-old version of myself, I would definitely focus as much as humanly possible to live on as little as possible. Understand and learn financial literacy, personal finance, and understand that the power and the value of compound interest. If I could go back 20 years from today, I'll be 18, right? And I could really start maxing out my tax advantage accounts, live on rice and beans for however long possible, go out on Groupon dates, living social dates, walking at the park, whatever, right? Put my head down and put as much money as possible into tax advantage accounts that are going to be invested in index funds, whether it's the S&P 500 or the total stock market. And then I would focus on improving how much, like Tim said, improving how much money I'm making, So I could take a salary of $30,000 and just put my head down and at least start strategically investing in a Roth, because I have more flexibility, and take advantage of HSA or 401k in order for me to be able to take advantage of those vehicles. But I would really see how little I can live on, drive close to the raggediest car I could find, right? That allowed me to be able to get from here to there, and not focus on optics and not focus on presentation. And what you discover is that 10 years, when you're in your 30s, the people who were laughing at you in your 20s, they'll be looking at you and idolizing you for the strides and the moves that you've made, because they'll see they were laughing at you back then when you were humbled and living on little. But when they start seeing the things that you were able to do as a result of being in position, because having that money in those funds in order for you to take down deals, take advantage of real estate opportunities, you can't make up for that time. And like, we can't go back to 2008, 2012. So to be in position like you were in 2012 to buy a house, people dream of that right now, So it just puts you in a completely different mindset, and you're not as stressed out. So I'd say focus financial literacy. Just do something that's going to allow you to be hungry. Learn something, learn a skill similar to sales, and combine that with something in the tech space and make as much money as humanly possible, and then squirrel as much of that money away, and then put yourself in position in order for you to make more money and start thinking about compound interest, almost like the second thing that you think about, when you wake up, because we can't make up for that, and it has to be like a part of our normal conversation. We cannot be in this situation. I mean, here it is, 2022, and we're already at the bottom. I mean, they're saying that black wealth is going to go to zero in 2050, 2053. I mean, that's 31 years from now. Where are we at already? I mean, we can't afford to allow these trust funds, man. Like, the trust fund kids are benefiting on our backs. We're marketing all of their brands, and come on, man. Like, we have to invest in ourselves. And I think that reading books, YouTube is the best vehicle that you can really use in order for you to contribute to your knowledge base.
Absolutely. So wealth engineering, what you got? What's your thought?
I can relate with a lot with what you guys said, man, because I remember, like I said, me, ever since I was young, I wanted to be rich. I asked my mom, hey, what job should I get if I wanted to be rich? She's like, get me a doctor. But again, that was the wrong question to ask. And it's because I didn't know any better. If I could talk, just like you were talking earlier, if I could talk to my younger self, I would say the same dedication that you gave school to be the best you could be, do the same to understand your wealth. You guys brought up a lot about financial literacy. Me, I would say I would talk to my younger self and say, learn how to make, keep, and multiply money. These may sound 3 simple steps to live the life that you want, but they're not necessarily easy. But the hardest part of all that, it's actually to stay disciplined, because there will be temptations. There will be temptation once it starts working. That's when the temptation is going to kick in, and you have to stick discipline and keep on and have long-term gratification. That's definitely what's going to help you get forward. So you guys talking also about making increasing your salary and learning skills, definitely agree with that. That's all part of learning more money. But when you get that money, how can you increase your net worth? How can you decrease your liabilities, decrease your debt, and then increase your assets, putting that money into a way that a vehicle that can multiply that wealth better, and also find a way to maintain more of the money that you make, right? If you work, if you don't necessarily need to be great in all 3. If you are simply good at all 3, you already will be in a life that you want to be. So, but if you are great, then that's when you're going to be a great investor. You're going to have a lot more options. And that's definitely what I would want to tell to my younger self. That's the information that I wish I had. At the time, I thought if you didn't get a diploma, that's the way my parents brainwashed me. They're like, if you don't get a diploma, you won't be able to eat, right? You won't be able to buy food. So to me, I was obsessed with getting a diploma because I'm like, I want to buy cars. And surprisingly, from the age of 21 all the way to 27, I had 6 cars every year. Every year I bought a car. Right? I didn't apply the delayed gratification, but if I knew any better, I would have saved, just like you were saying, to leverage compound interest, leverage windfall investments, invest in assets that can appreciate over time. I love technology even back then. So if I invested in things that I love, things I spent my free time anyway to learn on, then that's an easy vehicle right there that you can multiply your wealth. I knew a lot about Tesla before most people knew. I could predict exactly what Tesla was going to happen, but I didn't know how to invest back then. But that's actually how I actually started learning how to invest, is because I got tired. I got fed up. And maybe that's what people need to get. You need to get to a point where you fed up. You're like, I'm tired of living paycheck to paycheck. I'm tired of live like this. I need to take control of my life. It needs to start today, and then start making a plan and make it happen, and learn how to make, keep, and multiply money. That's definitely what I would conclude.
Nice. Good stuff. So I'll kind of round it out. One thing I do want to say, so as lead attorney said, man, I'm sorry, I'm just coming, I'm coming late into this. This is such a powerful stream. We need way more streams like this. And we appreciate that, lead attorney. I think that's one thing, is just having the conversation. And I think to add to is this, we all think in different types of ways, but I know, for example, I would say, my 3 ways would be shift your mindset. And when I say shift your mindset, some of that's just simple as read a book. I don't know if I have it back here on the shelf. Look, I got tons of books back here on the shelf. I'll just grab just for the purpose. For example, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, Thou Shalt Prosper. The biggest one was probably Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? So I say that to say I had some of these books for years and didn't even open them and read them. That's a problem. I was walking around or moving from place to place with life-changing information that I had come across, and I simply just didn't open up the book, right? So, but the good thing is I had the books, right? So whether I don't know if someone pointed me in that direction. I'm sure somebody told me about Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So the first thing I think is just shift your mindset, and you do that with information. The second part is study. So, for example, a lot of the statistics we went over today, honestly, I got to be honest, the most alarming one is the fact that the highest median income it's not that it's Asians, but it's that Asians are 94,903. It's double that of blacks. So what I'm going to do later on tonight, as I probably fall asleep, is ask myself, okay, I'm going to start looking into what is it now. A lot of people will go directly to what blacks have been through in America, and I am not one to deny that. There's no getting around that, because much of what hasn't changed through all those generations is the mindset. Someone has to give you mindset. That's the thing about American dream people leave out. If you don't have the mindset, then you will not get the American dream, or any dream for that part. So, but my thing is I can do the research to find out, okay, did Asians come here with it? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. If they did, what did they do once they got here? Because also, Thou Shalt Prosper by Rabbi Daniel Lapin he's Jewish. So with that being said, they have their own ways of doing things and giving back to their ecosystem. So there's so much we can learn, that if we would just focus on what they've done with what they have, regardless. And that's one thing we have to be accountable for. Have we done good with what we do have? And many of us have not. So I think the second part is just simply studying. And then I think wealth engineering did touch up pretty much on the discipline aspect. That is hard. The hardest thing that I had to remove from my vocabulary was, I deserve it. You don't deserve for what? I mean, it's what you got to do to survive, period. So I do think it's okay to, I do think there is something good about clearing your mind, because I do notice in myself, in just grinding year after year, even in whether it's my relationship with my wife, or just when I get a chance to get away, like my wife and I went to Paris a couple years back. Some of my best memories were when me and her just traveled, focused on nothing but each other and just traveling. So there is some importance in taking some time to just sit back, realize what you have done, realize where you're trying to go, and things like that. So I do think that is important. But at the end of the day, the discipline, you deserve nothing that you don't get. You have to stay disciplined. And for those that want to join the party and try to achieve some of the things that us on this panel have tried to, man, it's a hard road. That's what I'll say. And it's that way in anything. We're talking about money right now, but I've done myself, this is probably 210 whether it's videos on YouTube, a lot of work. And how far away is 100,000? Any way of getting there, any path where there's money, it all takes time and it takes consistency. So I just want to point that out. I think it's those things. And I think we got to continue, while we try to encourage others, we should focus more on conversations like this, allowing those who want to achieve it to come in and get it. We can't spend all our time trying to jam it into people's head who don't want it. It's a waste of time. I think we should mention it because, like I said, with the Robert Kiyosaki's book, somebody put that in my hands and it changed my life when I decided to read it. We should always put it in their hands, but I'm not tussling with you to try to bend your arm to get you to move up. It's too hard for me. My journey is hard enough already. So, anyway, do you guys have anything else you'd like to add? I definitely appreciate you guys.
Yeah, very quickly, and I know I already conclude very quickly. I just wanted to mention very quickly that one thing because I was reading again the stats, and I didn't even catch it at first, but this is seriously a problem because the stat when you were saying $45,000 is the median, it's the median household. I mean, that means
household.
That household. That means it's not just one salary. Because at first I thought it's the medium salary for anyone working.
No, household.
That means two people in the house, and that's something else. When I study engineering, I worked as an engineer for 5 years. Then I switched career to learn how to sell. I literally got some of the crappy sales jobs. And the first year that I started selling, I did 45 years. I did $45,000 in 1 year that first year. And man, you're talking about living paycheck to paycheck on that salary. It's not enough, man. It is not enough at all. So imagine a household, and this is the median. Wow, this is a huge, this is a problem. Because anyway, I just wanted to mention that because that could go over someone else.
Now that you say that, I just want to add this real quick. What that tells me is some of you all are settling. I am from small town USA, and you can get a job making $21 an hour. I just had a discussion about it today, right now. Some of you are making $11, $15 an hour, and literally by Friday next week could start, or next Monday could literally start making 40. Let's face it, $20 an hour is $40,000 a year. Some of you are just settling for no reason. You could literally leave that job making $13 an hour and automatically step up doing something that, when I say doesn't require a lot of skill, I'm talking about whether it's some type of parts place, some parts of manufacturing place, you could do it instantly. So part of it is you just have to want it. The jobs are out there. I believe anyone can make 40,000 at this point, if you're willing to at least do a little bit of research. So some of it you do have to look inside. I mean, it just is what it is. And that's someone coming from a small town in Virginia, a very small town. So if you can do it there, if you can make 40,000 there, you can make 60 in Atlanta. You can make 60 somewhere else, but you got to try. Guys, you got anything else to add?
Yeah. I'm curious now you guys are bringing up their point. I'd be curious to see what role entitlement programs are playing in that number being what it is.
Good point.
You know what I mean? Because there are people who will intentionally not make a lot of money in order for them to be able to participate in these programs. So I'd be curious if the entitlement programs are having, well, we can't even just say a negative impact. I mean, a super negative impact on the representation that we have in the economy. Because, man, I mean, that's half of what the Asians are making at a household level. And right. 40,000 is really two people making $10 an hour. You know, that's really two people making $10 an hour.
Yep,
man, that's scary. That's scary, man.
That's scary, man.
That is scary. Very scary. So I'm I'm alarmed. I'm actually alarmed when I look at these stats. I'm pretty shocked by them. It's just one thing, you know, you kind of have these things in your mind, but when you see it, it's yes, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. So intentional. You got anything else?
I just think when it comes to that, I just think it's one of those things where until we fix that from the bottom, that's the reason why we gonna always be at the bottom of statistics.
Mm.
Because I think that's what makes everything really critical and crucial is the fact that it's the numbers at the bottom that's really offsetting the place that we could be as a community versus where we are as a community. Because it's the ones that's, you know, I like to say it's the men and women that's delusional that's saying this stuff, but they're not even really paying attention to what's really going on.
Right.
So I think they are actually doing more damage than good because it skews the numbers further to the left versus to the right.
Yeah, you're spot on. Actually, this has been so alarming to me, and I've always been someone who, when it comes to business, I don't care. When it comes to anything in my life, I don't care what color you are, how tall you are, how short you are. But these statistics today have made me say, when people say buy black, I'm saying how? How? To have a functioning business looking at these numbers, how? You'd be you'd be destroying your business before you even got started, in my opinion. Unless you're really good at social media marketing, maybe. I just, it's crazy. So, great conversation, guys. I always enjoy this because I feel like we're four people who you know generally are moving in the same direction and do care about the community as well, but also know that at the end of the day, and this is for everyone, you know what they say every time you board a plane. You got to secure your own mask first.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can tell you right now, I'm securing my mask, then my family's, and then everyone else is next. And that's just the way it is. So I think that everyone else should be the same way. Guys, I really enjoyed this, and we will let's do this again. So thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next time.
All right. Y'all have a good one.
All right, take care.
See you.